All right, get ready to dive into a case that really shook Central Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
The story of Larry Bright,
Uh-huh.
better known as the Bonecrusher.
Yeah.
We've got court records, news reports, even some psychological profiles
Mm-hmm.
to sift through. So
Very.
our mission
Okay.
is to understand not just what he did, but how investigators finally caught him
Right.
and what might have driven him to such horrific acts.
Yeah. What's really captivating about this case is that Bright's own explanations for his
Yeah.
crimes are often contradictory,
Yeah.
which just adds another layer of complexity to this whole investigation.
Okay, so let's start with what we know.
Okay.
Larry Bright was born in Peoria County, Illinois,
All right.
back in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
And our sources are a little thin on his early life,
Hmm.
which honestly kind of adds to the mystery.
Yeah.
But by the early 2000s,
Okay.
a disturbing pattern starts to emerge.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah, his criminal record shows convictions for theft and burglary,
Yep.
which is something that you see sometimes with individuals who eventually commit far more serious crimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gradual escalation.
And it's during this time that he develops a specific fixation
Yeah.
on sex workers,
Okay.
particularly those who are African American.
Right.
This becomes a tragically significant detail in the case.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And between July 2003 and October 2004, the Peoria and Tazewell County areas
Okay.
are gripped by a series of terrifying murders.
Wow.
8 women,
Mm-hmm.
all between the ages of 30 and 41,
Okay.
are found dead, their bodies discarded in rural areas.
Jeez.
Can you imagine the fear that must have spread through the community?
Absolutely. Women are vanishing.
Right.
Bodies are turning up,
Yeah.
and it's a race against time to find the killer.
Exactly.
The victims, and it's important we say their names,
Absolutely.
are Sabrina Payne,
Mm-hmm.
Laura Lawler,
Okay.
Linda Neal,
Yeah.
and Brenda Irving. There are also 4 other women who went missing during this period. Their disappearance is still unexplained.
That's right. And the lack of answers in those cases only added to the sense of dread and urgency.
Oh, yeah.
So in October 2004,
Okay.
a special task force is formed to try to stop this nightmare.
Okay.
13 officers from the Peoria City Police, aided by the Illinois State Police and other agencies,
Yeah.
joined forces.
And their big break comes almost by chance, right?
In December 2004,
Okay.
a sex worker named Vicky Bomar
Mm-hmm.
is arrested for theft.
Okay.
While in custody, she offers information to the police, hoping to get some leniency in her own case.
And what she tells them is chilling.
Bomar claims that a client,
Mm-hmm.
who she later identifies as Larry Bright,
Okay.
lured her to his mother's outbuilding where he lived.
Hmm.
She alleges that he attempted to rape her, but she was able to escape.
But initially, the police are understandably skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean, she had a motive to lie,
Oh.
to get a better deal for herself.
But what's so intriguing here
Yeah.
is that as investigators dug deeper,
Uh-huh.
they found other incidents, at least 6,
Okay.
where Bright had shown aggressive behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically towards African-American sex workers.
Oh, wow.
This started to corroborate parts of Bomar's story.
So using Bomar's testimony, they finally have enough to charge Bright. Not for murder at this point,
Right.
but with illegal deprivation of liberty under aggravated circumstances.
Exactly. However, they didn't have enough hard evidence to keep him behind bars.
Oh.
He was released,
Wow.
which must have been incredibly frustrating for the task force.
But they didn't give up.
Right.
And in January 2005, they got the break they desperately needed.
That's right.
Yeah.
A judge issued a search warrant allowing them to thoroughly examine Bright's property.
Okay.
And what they found there,
Yeah.
well, it was the stuff of nightmares.
They discovered disturbed patches of ground, areas that looked like they had been recently dug up and covered over.
Bright's mother tried to downplay it,
Mm.
saying they were just removing some raspberry bushes.
Oh, really?
But the police weren't convinced.
And thank goodness they weren't.
When they started digging in these suspicious spots,
Mm-hmm.
they discovered ashes and numerous bone fragments.
Tiny pieces of bone.
Yeah.
It's almost unimaginable.
It's truly disturbing.
Yeah.
And the forensic analysis confirmed their worst fears.
Oh, no.
The bone fragments were human.
Wow.
They finally had more than enough evidence to arrest Bright.
Oh, wow.
This time the charge was murder.
So they've got Larry Bright in custody,
Yeah.
and now the really difficult work begins.
Right.
Trying to understand what could drive a person to commit such horrific acts.
Hmm.
And this is where the case takes a truly dark turn.
You're right, the details of his crimes are incredibly disturbing.
Yeah.
Bright would lure women, often sex workers, with the promise of money or drugs, taking them back to his house where it's believed he would strangle them
Wow.
during or after sexual encounters.
Oh, geez.
This level of premeditation is just chilling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then there's the detail that earned him that gruesome nickname, the Bonecrusher.
Right.
He didn't just kill his victims, he burned their bodies.
Yeah.
And they get this, he crushed the remaining bone fragments with a hammer.
That's right.
It's a level of brutality that's difficult to comprehend.
It's truly disturbing.
Yeah.
And it raises so many questions about what was going on in his mind. Was
Right.
it simply about destroying evidence?
Right.
Or was it something more?
Yeah. Was there a psychological component to this act?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
That's what I'm wondering. What could possibly drive a person to go to those lengths?
And unfortunately, with serial killers, there's rarely a simple answer.
Right.
It's often a complex mix of factors,
Right.
psychological predispositions, personal experiences, maybe even societal influences.
Right. And Bright himself offered several explanations for his actions, some more believable than others.
Right.
At first, he claimed to be driven by hatred towards women,
Okay.
specifically African-American women,
Yeah.
even blaming it on a supposed HIV/AIDS diagnosis he claimed he got from a sex worker.
But of course, that was quickly debunked when
Yeah.
he tested negative for the virus.
Right. So if it wasn't that, what was it?
Right.
Later, he changed his story,
Mm-hmm.
saying that he'd been sexually abused by African-American inmates while in prison years earlier.
Okay.
He said this experience fueled a desire for revenge, first targeting black men,
Yeah.
and then for reasons that are difficult to grasp, shifting his focus to black women.
Now, it's crucial to remember that attributing motives in these kinds of cases is incredibly complex.
Sure.
There's rarely a single clear-cut explanation.
Right.
And, sometimes these individuals offer explanations that fit their own narratives.
Yeah. Whether it's true or not.
Right.
Think of it like this. They've already committed these horrific acts, so what's a few more lies?
That's a good point.
Right.
So while we can consider Bright's claims, it's impossible to say with any certainty whether they were genuine or just attempts to manipulate the situation.
Yeah.
It's a bit like trying to assemble a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. And we also can't forget the devastating impact his crimes had. Not just on the community, but on the families of the victims.
Right.
They're the ones left to pick up the pieces,
Yeah.
to grapple with the grief and the unanswered questions.
Absolutely. Now, with the evidence mounting against him, Bright ends up striking a deal with the prosecution.
Yes, he agreed to a plea bargain.
Okay.
In exchange for confessing to all 8 murders, he was spared the death penalty.
And so in May of 2006, he was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
Essentially, he will spend the rest of his life behind bars, which, given the nature of his crimes, seems like a just outcome.
Yeah.
But even with his conviction, there are still some lingering questions.
Why?
Some loose ends in the case.
You're talking about the claims he made about committing additional murders in other states, right?
Exactly. At one point, he claimed to have killed people in Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Washington, and Arizona.
But he later recanted those statements.
Right.
Which makes you wonder, was he just trying to get attention?
Yeah.
Or was there some truth to his claims?
It's hard to say, and that's part of what makes this case so fascinating.
Right.
It's full of these twists and turns, these glimpses into a mind that seems to operate on a completely different level.
And then there are the psychological insights he offered during the investigation. He admitted to contemplating suicide, but said his religious beliefs prevented him from doing so.
He also revealed that he had initially intended to provoke the officers who arrested him into killing him.
Oh, wow.
But he changed his mind because his mother was present.
Oh, geez.
It's a chilling glimpse into his mindset at the time.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like peering into a dark abyss.
Right.
And it makes you wonder what combination of factors could lead a person down such a destructive path.
That's a question that criminologists and psychologists have been grappling with for years.
Right.
And honestly, there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is that while Bright's case is unique in its details, there are certain patterns, certain behavioral traits that we see in other serial killers.
Okay, so what are some of those patterns?
Okay.
What are some of the red flags that investigators look for when trying to profile these kinds of offenders?
Well, one thing that often stands out is a history of cruelty to animals.
Okay.
It's not always present,
Right.
but when it is, It can be a significant indicator of a deeper psychological disturbance.
That makes sense. It's like a desensitization to violence, almost like a rehearsal for the real thing.
Exactly. And another common thread is a fascination with fire. We see this in a lot of arson cases, but it can also manifest in more disturbing ways.
Yeah.
Like in Bright's case, where he used fire to try to dispose of the bodies.
And then, of course, there's the sexual component.
Right.
A lot of serial killers are driven by twisted fantasies, and their crimes often involve a sadistic element.
Right. And it's important to note that these are just some general patterns.
Okay.
Every case is unique.
Sure.
And there's no single profile that fits all serial killers.
So how do investigators even begin to approach these cases?
Right.
It seems like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It can be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
But there are certain investigative techniques that have proven to be effective.
Okay.
One is geographical profiling, which involves analyzing the locations of the crimes
Okay.
to try to identify the offender's home base or areas of comfort.
So it's like trying to map out their movements
Yeah.
to see if there are any patterns or connections.
Exactly. And another important tool is victimology, which involves studying the victims to see if there are any common characteristics or connections. These can help investigators narrow down the suspect pool
Right.
and develop a better understanding of the offender's motivations.
So in Bright's case, for example, they would have looked at the fact that his victims were all sex workers, specifically African-American women.
Precisely that information would have been crucial in helping them understand his patterns and potentially predict his next move.
So it sounds like investigating these kinds of cases is as much about science as it is about instinct and experience.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance of both.
Yeah.
You need the scientific tools and techniques to gather and analyze the evidence.
Right.
But you also need the intuition and experience to interpret that evidence and make those critical connections.
And of course, you need a bit of luck along the way.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes it's a seemingly insignificant detail,
Yeah.
a chance encounter that can break the case wide open.
So with Bright now, behind bars, the investigation is essentially over. But the psychological and societal questions his case raises are far from settled.
You're right. This case forces us to confront the darkest aspects of human nature.
Yeah.
It makes us question how someone could commit such monstrous acts and what we can do to prevent such tragedies from happening again. What I find particularly fascinating here is how Bright's case really highlights the effectiveness of a multi-agency task force. Remember, it was the combined efforts of the Peoria City Police, the Illinois State Police, and other agencies that ultimately brought him to justice.
Yeah, that collaboration was key.
Yeah.
They pooled resources, shared information, and never gave up.
Right.
But it wasn't just teamwork, right?
No.
Forensic science played a huge role, too.
Absolutely. Without those bone fragments, without the DNA analysis, who knows how long this would have gone on. It's a stark reminder of how crucial forensic science is, especially in cases like this.
Yeah. For anyone listening who's interested in true crime or the criminal justice system, this case really highlights how those elements can work together.
Yeah.
But it also raises some tough questions about our society, doesn't it? Like, how do we protect vulnerable populations? Especially sex workers who are often targeted by predators like Bright.
That's a crucial point. Bright's case shines a light on the dangers they face and underscores the need for better support systems and resources to help them get out of those situations and stay safe.
Yeah. It's a reminder that we can't just focus on catching the criminals.
Yeah.
We have to address the underlying issues that contribute to these crimes in the first place.
Absolutely.
Things like poverty, addiction, and the systemic inequalities that make certain groups more vulnerable.
I couldn't agree more. You've hit the nail on the head there. Larry Bright's case is a stark reminder that evil exists in the world, but it also showcases the incredible work of dedicated individuals who fight tirelessly to combat it. It speaks volumes about the power of collaboration, perseverance, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.
And perhaps most importantly, it serves as a call to action for all of us to be more aware, more compassionate, and more committed to building a world where these kinds of horrors are less likely to occur.
Well said. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this deep dive, it's this. Never underestimate the impact, for good or for evil, that a single person can have, and never lose sight of the importance of fighting for justice, for the victims, and for a safer future for everyone.
That's a powerful message. And for our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about the psychology of serial killers or the investigative techniques used to catch them, There are some excellent resources out there.
No, yeah.
A quick search online will lead you to books, articles, and even documentaries that delve deeper into these topics.
And don't forget, every case, no matter how disturbing, can teach us something valuable.
Mm,
Whether it's about ourselves, our society, or the delicate balance between good and evil that exists in the world around us.
that's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with a new case and a new set of questions to explore. Until then, stay curious and stay safe.